Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this video number 4 in our series of videos for the course Future Societies. Today I'm just finishing a cup of tea. Tea is good. It's actually really good. So today I want to sort of talk to you a little bit about what we've explored so far and think about what we're going to be looking at in the coming lectures. I think I've been reflecting on this morning, and I think what's absolutely clear and crucial about what we've been talking about is sort of the issue of beliefs. And it's clear that if one believes that something's going on in the world, and if we believe we're facing certain crises, then we're more likely to act. I mean, it's logical. If we don't believe there are crises, then we're less likely to take action to address them. And although this is so self-explanatory, it's actually crucial because we're building these beliefs, sometimes around facts and sometimes just about, what we personally assume is happening in the world. And, we've explored climate change in some detail. And I think climate change is a really good example. Obviously, if you don't believe it's happening, then you're not going to take action, and you're going to see any action to address it as sort of economic suicide. The fact is, though, as I've stated, there's really no doubt in terms of the science that we're doing something. We're changing the composition of the atmosphere, and this is having an impact in terms of changes in climate. But as our discussions have gone on in class, I've realised that there are certain ways of seeing the world that are going to lead to the changes that I feel we need in order to make or create a flourishing future. And obviously there are other views and other opinions which I believe are going to lead us on a path of maybe mutually assured destruction. So it's kind of crucial. We're at a period in human history where we have to make some decisions. We have to make them quickly if we're going to change. But if we don't all come together, then this is unlikely to happen. And, as we talked, there's maybe the importance of legislation in order to make things happen. But then obviously there are a lot of people who don't want greater government interference in their affairs. I think it's quite telling that today the UK government have just committed to net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2050, and this is a legally binding decision, and that, in a sense, that gives companies something to work with. Whereas if governments do not impose this, then it's kind of a movable feast, and companies can make decisions about what they're going to do or not. But I think this gives a certain, it gives a certainty, and companies can work within that framework and they can make changes now. So I think the legislation is important. Obviously, within that, companies have to be able, and individuals have to make their own decisions about how they're going to do it. But I kind of feel that we're at a point where we haven't got time to keep debating these issues. Action is required. And as I said, a lot of the actions we're going to take to create more flourishing futures are going to address a lot of the crises we face. Inequality, for example. And so it feels to me that the job, the task at hand, is to basically raise global awareness of the situations we face so that we don't keep on discussing and arguing whether or not action is required. Because if we keep doing that, then we're going to get nowhere. And some of these threats are going to hit us in the face and we won't know what's happened. Obviously, some of the discussions were very interesting around space exploration, etc. And we had differing opinions on that, which is important. As I said, my problem is that basically we're looking for other planets to exploit, and therefore I see it as negative. Some of you see it as very positive, and in a sense it allows human beings to expand, explore, reach their full potential, and that's an opinion that I respect, even though I don't necessarily agree with. I think if we go to other planets or to other places with the same mentality that we have here, I don't see that as a positive at all. And as I said, obviously we can all have our different opinions on that. It's just where I'm coming from. So these are issues that we're wrestling with. One thing that I want you to think about, and this is key for this coming week, is we talk, as I've said, we talk a lot about these issues, and we all have different beliefs and different opinions, and we're not necessarily making decisions based on objective facts. Now, I use the word objective advisedly. I do fear that sometimes we put too much store on our science, but as far as we know, as far as we are as a species, science provides us a way to actually know the world in terms of actually identifying certain processes and certain aspects of that world which we need to understand in order to move forward. Obviously, there are different ways of knowing, sensing, feeling the world, which are equally important. But in terms of policy decisions around some of these issues, I think science is important. And if we were to come at some of these issues just from a scientific perspective, then we would be taking action. Again, I give the example of climate change. The science tells us we need to do something, but as we've seen, some very powerful politicians, they're not using science. They're using ignorance, but powerful ignorance and opinions to make decisions around important issues. President Trump, absolute classic example of someone who has not got a clue about the science, but is able to dictate what's happening around his country's actions on climate change. Luckily, the states are taking lots of action, cities are taking lots of action, and also individuals are taking action. But in terms of, if we look at the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, and what goes on there, by pulling out of the Paris Accord, Trump is sending a very strong and misguided message to the rest of the world. At a time when we should be coming together, he is using his opinion, not his knowledge. It is kind of his knowledge, but his lack of knowledge to shape the world. So the point being here is that imagine that we had some way, imagine that we could use artificial intelligence to make some of these decisions. And as I said to you in class, I struggle with AI. It's, for me, again, it's technological hubris. It's the human agenda, the human arrogance, which frightens me. But forgetting all that, if we could develop this artificial intelligence which could make decisions based on a reasoned analysis of facts, then I think potentially we would find ourselves in a better position than we are, because a lot of the decisions that are being made in the world today are based on beliefs and they're based on fears. If we look at Brexit, It's based on fear. It's based on fear of outsiders, a fear of loss of identity. And it's an unfounded fear. Understandably, people are concerned, but in terms of where we need to be headed, I would argue that we need to be coming together as a species, not starting to move apart. And so, is there a way that AI could help us there? Again, with a lot of these issues, we wouldn't be acting the way we are if we were basing our decisions on the facts. And I wonder if AI could remove the subjectivity from a lot of these decisions, could remove the subjectivity from the human condition, and basically we would have artificial intelligence which would be able to analyse these issues and make these decisions based on facts. Obviously, it wouldn't work in all cases. We need that human emotion. We need that to colour our decisions, but not always. And sadly, those human emotions which often colour these decisions are again based on fear, based on hatred, based on anxiety about what could happen to people. As I say, fear-based decisions which can be so challenging. So what I want you to do is, well, obviously, think about AI, read about it, and explore that idea of where it could be positive, and also, obviously, there are huge negatives with it, which we also have to be aware of, very aware of, because we're entering a new realm, a new future. Again, we're using technologies which we don't necessarily know how to control. What does that mean? What does that mean for the future? So explore that. Also, to take this idea of legislation a bit further, I also want you to think about this law of ecocide, which I've mentioned. We'll explore it more in class, so don't worry too much. I want you to focus more on the AI in terms of your readings. But this idea that maybe we could introduce a law against ecocide, for example, so to actually hold companies accountable, individuals, countries accountable for the damage they may do to the environment, if that damage is likely to undermine the biophysical systems that make life on Earth possible. In a sense, in the past, companies have been able to act with impunity. They've been able to do what they want. If you look at what oil companies have done, obviously it's been driven by consumer demand, but they have acted in ways which have caused massive environmental despoliation. So is there a way, a legal way, of holding those firms accountable? You, I'm sure, will have interesting opinions on that. I've never seen an issue, or rarely seen an issue, which has divided people so comprehensively. This idea of, yes, we should take big corporations to court. We should charge them, and then I think other people have found that this is a really frightening prospect that companies could be held accountable for the actions they've taken to fulfill consumer demand. So we need to look at that. And then, obviously, we're still thinking about what the future looks like. With all of this, we've got to think, how is this influencing the future? What's it doing to shape it? What are the positives? What are the negatives? And again, these are all stories that are shaping the future. And so I want us still to think of this. They are not givens. They are very much stories that we are creating. So please, as I say, reflect especially on the AI piece, and come to class willing to have hopefully some fruitful and some difficult discussions, because I can guarantee we'll all have different, or many of us will have sort of differing opinions on the role of AI in creating our future. Have a good few days. See you next week. Thanks.